and he's doing a
Yep.
community interviews and.
I got another
Official
book.
too.
I've got another book coming out in March. Maybe you can help me get on that.
Well, I can tell. him.
Another book?
All you have to do is call him.
Oh,
Discovering
I got
nothing.
two.
Discovering what?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I even printed out the one.
It's not about Tumwater history.
No, it's about the Northwest Passage. Captain
It's
Cook.
6:30.
Oh, excellent.
I'll bet he'll talk to you.
Good.
Chuck, is there any preference in where we put the new items? In the,
Like,
okay. Okay. If he's on Zoom, will that show up on a screen? How do I know?
Can you wear hats in council?
Pardon?
chamber?
Okay.
this moment of silence.
You think we'll be
I don't
done?
know what word.
Dearly beloved, we have gathered
Yeah,
together
yeah,
here. Okay, at an angle, I think it's 6:30, so I'm gonna call order the Tumwater Historic Preservation Commission as of November 16, 2023. Brianna, do you do the call of order or do I do the call of order?
You get the honors.
Oh my gosh, I want to make sure I turn my sheet over to get all the names. Okay. Nice having you incidentally. And it's kind of fun being the city hall for a change. That's kind
Yeah.
of cool.
Yeah.
I will announce that my wife has on my calendar a fire truck for the location of the, and she didn't change it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's on my calendar. Anyway, Dave Shipley, the chair, is present and speaking. Alex Rossiter,
Here.
David DeCandre,
Present.
Renee Radcliffe Sinclair,
Here.
Marnie Slakey, Don Trosper,
Yes.
and we are all here, a full quorum plus. We will go to changes to the agenda. I have two things I need to add to the agenda, and one would be my visitation to the Starbucks Grange on Yelm Highway in Henderson. And if Mr. Schneider shows up, we will have commentary regarding a possible sign going into the Pioneer Cemetery over by Walmart, I guess, across the street from Walmart. Everybody calls it anyway.
Mhm.
So we do not have approval of minutes, and you'll notice on there, we have two that are delayed. We didn't get our minutes again, staff person.
Is that on? Okay, I don't know what the exact issue is, but our minutes service has not returned the minutes to us yet. So
Okay,
waiting on that.
so we'll have to have a meeting on December 24 to check out the minutes, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Okay, public comment? Anybody on there yet? Okay, I will skip that. I will go down to change it to the agenda. Before I do the minutes, I should have done the changes to the amendment, and I'll go ahead and do that at this point, following a public comment. Grange Starbucks, Mr. Schneider made arrangements for me to go into the basement of the, he called it the Grange Bucks or something like that, Starbucks anyway. And basically, before I went down there, he talked about a tremendous amount of effort he made on his part, physically as well as mentally, as well as financially, trying to keep the Grange and keep it as near to its original status as possible. And I don't know how much you people know or don't know, but I don't know how many have you been to Starbucks that I'm talking about on Henderson Yelm Highway. But the cross trusses are original. The windows are original, except for the part that heads toward the patio type area. The wood interior walls are all original. The floor is original. The paint that's in the middle of the floor and on the edges of the floor are original. He said that he personally removed maple that was on top of the original flooring so he could get down to the original flooring. Two fans, one that still is in place on the whatever end that would be, north end. Still has a pull rope by the fan where the fan was, and one of the fans is down in the basement actually. Bathrooms have original wood siding or wood, whatever. But anyway, he made arrangements so that a door could be unlocked so I could go down to the basement. And inside the basement is a room as big as the upstairs room, the main floor. It's huge. A lot of beams coming down. Very poor lighting because it wasn't rigged up to be lighting. He originally wanted to have that as a meeting room, but Starbucks, the corporation, did not like the idea. And so it became a kind of a leftover storage room for all the equipment that or stuff that he came across. And so I got 10,000 pictures. In fact, I had to stop because my battery on the phone was down to 27% or 19% or something like that. And I thought, oops, I need to go home and get this to recharge. But I took several photographs. One neat thing that I found was a chart that lists the Grand Masters or whatever the term is for Grange from the very beginning, 1908 to whatever the stopping point was. I don't remember the stopping point, 78, 88, whatever it was be, and list their names. And Mr. Briggs, Briggs Nursery, I think was on the second on the list, if I remember correctly. The Grange started in 1908 and the Grange organization started in the 1800s. There's other things in there, lots of books, financial checkbook registers, minutes. So I didn't take time because it's just too much. So I'm going to go back and see if I can glean out of that more information about the Chambers Prairie Grange. So that's where I'm headed. Bottom line is what I'm hoping to do, and he thinks the corporation, the Starbucks Corporation will go for it, is some type of signage. And the signage that I think I'd like to aim for, instead of having one outdoors, say the patio area, he managed to hang on to the original sign that used to be on Yelm Highway that calls it the Chambers Prairie Grange. Managed to hang on to that. It's on the east wall. There's an interesting story there is that he saw the sign on the wall outside and said, wow, I think I'd like to hang on to that. So one day he went by the building and the sign was missing. So he scrambled to find out, okay, where'd the sign go? And he found out that it was taken to a antique dealer for virtually nothing. And he was not too pleased. I don't know if I should reveal how much he paid for it, but he had to buy the sign back in order to hang on to it. And I thought that if the commission goes for a signage, that a sign could go up below the original sign for the Chambers Prairie Grange, and the sign would be therefore visible for people interior and certainly protected from vandalism and or weather or whatever it may be. So sometime next year, I hope to have all this done, and I'll come back with a proposal on what kind of maybe illustrations I can find, what information I can get and what have you. And since you are on the farm, the other part of the sign will not only deal with the Grange, but I'm hoping to mention the Wiki farm. I think it's the correct pronunciation. Am I right on that? Whoever knows?
Wiki, yes.
Wiki. Okay. He told me a story of a bull killing two people on that farm, which I thought would be kind of an interesting anecdote to history. And the reason why I would like to do this is that so many people go there and say, oh, this is a neat little building, but I don't know if very many people know what the building is, what it was, or know anything about the National Grange Organization or what the purpose of the organization was. So I'd like to have 3 stories on those. And across the street was a school. I don't know if you people are aware of it, but the Hayes School was across the street. I haven't figured out the exact location, but I'm going to guess it's the Habitat for Humanity housing location or someplace in that general location. I came across a reunion of, I forget what year the school closed, 1950, and maybe Prosper, you might know the date. I don't know off the top of my head, but anyway, they had a reunion of all the classes, and there were all the names, all the people who attended that reunion, and it's multi copies of the Hayes School. And I don't know if you remember a person by the name of Roger Easton, but he's a longtime historian, now deceased. And he told me one time, a long time ago, that he went to school there. And I said, oh, come on, there was not a school there. You mean where the little nursery is, you know, the Japanese nursery or whatever it was? And he says, yeah, there was a school there. And I confirmed it. There was a small little gray, black on white paper picture of the school. So there must be a photograph somewhere of the school. And I'm hoping to incorporate, therefore, something about the Chambers Prairie Grange, something about the Grange, something about the farm, and maybe something about Hayes School. And I think it would be an appropriate thing to have the Historic Commission maybe approve and spend a little bit of money on. So anyway, that's a summary of my 3-4 hours in the musty catacombs of downstairs of the Grange. So any questions or comments? Yes.
Who actually owns that building now? Does Starbucks own it?
That's a good question. I don't know if Schneider, when I went in, he went to the assistant manager for a key or a combination to get into the basement. And the assistant manager called him the boss. And he says, or something like that. And then he said, no, I'm not the boss, but I'm gathering he's the owner. And I think and maybe our staff person will know. The gathering I got was he's leasing it out to the corporation.
Yeah, he was the owner. He was the developer from Grange to Starbucks,
Okay.
and behind that whole project. Once Starbucks was done, he sold it to another company whose name escapes me at the moment.
Oh,
They
okay.
hired him back because he is a property manager. They hired him back to manage the building.
Okay. Yes.
And the original farmhouse in the farm development is still there, still occupied. So
Oh, interesting.
on Wiki Court. So
Yeah.
just there's
Interesting.
got to be 50 years old, 40 years old.
And I understand it was a very complex, multifaceted farm. It was not just, it kind of reminds me of the farm that used to be the Brown Farm out on Nisqually Delta. It kind of reminds me of what I heard about it, but I don't know enough about it to know for sure. Do we have David? Hays, I believe is how it's. Yeah. Possible, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any people in? Okay. Well, we will go to what is print. Well,
Can I add one more to that? So as you, and I appreciate you doing this work, as you go through, when we had originally talked about it, it was for a brass, bronze, some kind of a plaque to go on the outside of the building that would say historic building. And as you're progressing through this and deciding, what story or stories are we going to tell and how are we going to tell that? We have the option of inside with a plaque or with some kind of sign with pictures in it that would describe what happens. Or you could do a combo of a sign inside and then a sign outside, maybe on the patio, weatherproof sign like the interpretive signs we have in the historic district. They could have additional pictures of maybe the larger area so that when people are outside, they can kind of do the look around and say, hey, that used to be this.
right now, I do have there's a banner that has their name on it. I was hard pressed. I got lots of pictures. I'm hard pressed to find something that went like a wow. There are a portrait pictures, photos of Briggs and one other gentleman, I can't remember his name. But that's the next thing I'd love to find are more illustrations that or documentation or whatever, that type of thing. So anyway, I would think at least a sign on the inside that's informative. The brass one on the outside, are you thinking like ones that like Olympia has?
Oh, I would leave that totally to you.
Okay.
However you want to do it.
Okay.
just know that we have the resources to help you design
Yeah,
and have those made.
okay.
What are those reasons? Has a budget been set for us for next year yet?
You have $10,000 this year, you have $10,000 next year. So that money's in a biennial budget, so it does not go away. So as of January 1st, you'll have $20,000.
That's a pretty good sized
I
sign.
guess we could do the inside. and
$20,000
outside
sign. Wow. Put in neon lights and
There is a pretty good photo of the Hay School in the Tumwater Archives photos.
excellent.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah. And check with Karen at
Okay,
Schmidt House.
okay. I got a long ways to go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I really like this idea. I think they did a nice job of maintaining the look of the
Yeah,
building,
yeah.
and I am very supportive of the idea, but the Grange is so important in Washington state history and their role in how we vote in our primaries here. It'd be nice to somehow.
And they do have an
incorporate a little of
office,
that history.
and they do have an office downtown Olympia.
They're still there.
I think so. The last time I went by, I was still there.
Yeah.
A little anecdote, the city of Tumwater did not want to keep the chimney because of stability and danger and what have you. So he put in a rebar, steel beams, and filled it with concrete. So the chimney you see out there is inoperable, but you wouldn't be able to tell that from the outside.
It looks great.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the fact that somebody hung on to a building and you can clearly tell what's not original, and that's the glass toward the patio. You can certainly tell that because that glass is nice and clear and straight and what have you. But if you look at the other windows, every one of them is wavy, which is kind of cool. And the even the stairwell going down to the basement has railings, obviously, but it's galvanized pipe. I mean, it's thick galvanized pipe, and it's on both sides. I'm thinking, wow.
The tile floor is original.
Pardon?
Tile. floor
Yes.
Oh.
is-
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay. We are finally to what some of these people are waiting for out here. The Old Brew House Phase 2 Seismic Improvements Certificate of Appropriateness Application.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Shipley. I am delighted to be here at your last meeting of the year with this most important request.
We don't have a meeting in December? I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Uh-oh. The most important request, which is for the certificate of appropriateness, the last document I need to go with our buildings permit submittal for seismic improvements at the Old Brew House. Before we move to the action part of the meeting, I have two subject matter experts here tonight. Don Carney, our capital projects manager. Hello, Don. And Jim Carey, our architect. Jim is now calling this the pandemic project. We started on phase 2 in 2020, just after we closed out phase 1. We've had just one extension and just worked diligently through the pandemic and the challenges that came with that, a few delays, even a little delay with archaeology and historic preservation. But here we are tonight. So you have the official application and the letter of concurrence from DAHP. I'm going to ask Jim Carey to come and show you a slideshow one more time. This is will this be the third time this year? So we're going to go through the one last time and show you the plans, and then we'll be available for questions. And I'll come back and ask you to consider that certificate of appropriateness. So Jim Carey.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you for having me here tonight. It's nice to be here in person. This is I think the third time that we've done this presentation this year, and it is a presentation of the phase 2, which is simply the seismic improvements to the building. I can tell you that we submitted the construction permit application and documents to the city in October. So just maybe a month ago. And that's with the city right now. And then your approval is part of that application process. So let's jump back into the presentation here. This is my clicker. These are photos of the historic building. The ones on the left are current photos, and the one on the right is an historic photo showing the building in its context early in its existence. Oop, yep. We used the historic documents that were available at the foundation. There are many documents that were at our disposal, and these historic drawings were produced in Milwaukee, and they show the building as they anticipated it being built. And I'll come back to Milwaukee in a second as we move further into the presentation. You'll notice at the bottom, got a pointer. I do not. At the bottom of the drawing, you can see stepped footings. Those are the foundation for this heavy masonry and concrete building. And they anticipated that this building would be built either on substantial soils or on bedrock. And I imagine as they discussed through letters in the early 1900s, and when they were describing this location, they anticipated a much stronger setting groundwork for this building. These are more of those building section drawings. The folks in the architects in Milwaukee were brewery experts, so they anticipated the gravity brewing process, and these were part of those really awesome construction drawings that they produced. Once again, at the bottom, you can see these sort of pyramid-shaped foundations that they anticipated building the building and supporting the original structure. So these are more historic photos. There's a lot of information. We've used magnifying glasses and things like that to look at these and look at details. So far, phase one, we did a lot of masonry work, and so we used the existing building, obviously, and these historic photos to guide that project. And then as we move further, we use these to help us figure out how to do the seismic mitigation project as well. So in this one in the lower left, we always really like to see, because there are 3 gentlemen without ropes or harnesses or anything doing the installing the roof structure of that building back in the 1905, 1906. These are illustrations of the building when we first started working on the project in 2014. Actually, is when we first did the first study as part of the craft brewery project. And so this was the condition. I believe we took these photographs, for instance, the one in the upper right from a drone showing the deterioration of the existing brick. What you see over that existing brick is a temporary roof structure that was put on to help keep water off of that, off of the brick, and help it last a little bit longer until we did the masonry restoration project, which we finished in about 2019. These are photographs. So this corner in the upper right is the same as that photograph. We used new masonry units that were built, they're put together by Mutual Materials. We did color matching. Of course, the masonry units at this time were not normal, the normal sizes, the nominal sizes that we use today. So we had new masonry units built at 2 different plants, and the change is pretty dramatic. We also obviously cleaned the masonry, put that all back together. So the next step, phase 2, is the seismic mitigation project. Going back to those foundations. So this is a photograph on the left and in the middle of the structural engineer and me down in what is technically the crawl space beneath the structure. And the city of Tumwater was kind enough to pump out about 12 feet of water from this space so that we could climb down in there. The water table is You can see where the dark concrete stops. And that is the typical water table down at the brewery site. So they pumped out all the water and we looked at the structure underneath. We're pretty sure we were the first people that were down there since the building was built. The structure is in great shape. I mean, the concrete was in great shape. It holds up underwater and pretty well. And the thing that we figured out in this process and also digging through the documents is that those original drawings that were anticipating spread footings didn't work in this location. And the drawing on the right is actually a timber pile plan for supporting this heavy masonry structure down in the riverfront. What we imagined happened is that they either anticipated this or didn't anticipate that they'd have groundwater problems. They dug a hole for the foundations, and then at a certain point, they just couldn't keep up with the water. And they, as much as they dug and as much as they pumped, they just couldn't imagine, getting down far enough where they hit bedrock. So they probably drove some piles to test. They found out the bedrock was about 12 feet below where they expected the spread footings to be. And they came up with this plan on the right, which is over almost 500 timber piles. You can see the circles. Each one of those represents basically a tree trunk. And then the line that connects them is this sort of metal strap that ties the tops of those piles together. And then they pour a cap on top of that. And then once all that was in place, they could build the spread footings on top of that and then build the masonry tower above. And so while we were down below, we were checking on what was actually down there because, we could kind of, throw a rock in and, see how loud it splashed and, try to figure out how deep it was. But until we were down there, we couldn't really tell. So what was great was we learned that there is this space down there. We don't think it was ever used for anything other than the supporting part of this building. I think we had some people had told us that maybe they stored kegs down there, but without a full pumping system going full time, it would have never been available for them to do that. So as part of the construction project, we're anticipating our contractor pumping this area out. We're removing the 18 to 24 inches of muck that's down there. And then there's actually going to be construction down in this space, down in the crawl space beneath the tower, as we support all the steel and concrete that goes up above it to support the tower for seismic improvements. So these are pretty small, but these show you the plans direct from the structural engineer's drawing. I think what we'll do is I'll go through these quickly and sort of illustrate what's happening here, and then we have a 3D drawing that illustrates it much more clearly as to what's happening. The one on the left is called the structural foundation plan. That's actually the plan down in that crawl space. And in that location, there will be two things going on. They'll be installing micro piles, which are steel pipes that are driven with machinery down. It'll be down through the existing concrete. Those are driven to until they hit bedrock, which is, like I said, about 12 feet below. And then they will be filled with concrete, capped. And then those are tied into the existing foundation and also new foundation grade beams that will be installed down there. There'll be some that go straight down vertically, and those are for gravity loads. And then there'll be some that'll go at a 45-degree angle out from the foundation. And those will be more to support lateral loads so that the building is stable. Moving up through the plans, level 1 has new concrete walls on the east and west sides of that floor. As we move up, we're going to infill some of those large openings that were part of the brewery construction. So that where there were large kettles, we need to fill those in with concrete and reinforcing steel to provide a much stronger diaphragm at each of those levels, deep in the lower levels of the building. When we get to level 2, the concrete transitions to a steel frame. And so there's a steel frame that'll be on 2, 3, 4, 5. And 6, and all the way up to the top of the tower. These are more of the structural engineer's drawings. On the lower level, where you can actually see once again those pyramid shaped foundations, there will be concrete grade beams, some concrete walls that are supporting the existing concrete walls. And then you can see as you move up, you'll see the diagonal framing. That's the steel that goes up through the building. And then that steel transitions all the way up through those diagonals to transfer the loads from the top of the tower all the way back down to the new foundation supporting elements. These are more of those structural drawings, and these are actually the this one on the left is looking west to show the ground floor concrete that is on that wall, and then the one on the right is looking east, and that's the concrete that's added almost all the way up the wall of what is the sort of the grain room on that east side. So we made these drawings in our office to illustrate the existing building and then the structural improvements that we're adding to it. So the existing building is on the left, and that shows as you start from the top, you've got the roof and then the masonry, and then there's sort of a brown rectangle at the base. That's actually current grade. And then below that, you can see the gray foundation. And then below that, all the white sticks represent the timber piles, the original ones. And then below that that's another rectangle that represents the bedrock below. The middle drawing shows the combination of the building and the new structure. And then the drawing on the right, the red is the new piles that are the vertical ones are getting the vertical load, and then the diagonal ones are stabilizing building and holding it in place in the lateral load. The blue is new concrete. That's reinforced concrete on the east and west walls. And then below, that's new concrete down in that crawl space. And then you can see the framework of steel in blue climbing all the way up to the top of the tower. So the middle drawing is a composite of the two. The one on the right illustrates the new structure. And then these next 4 drawings, I think we corrected these. They show the last meeting. I think these might have been labeled incorrectly, but these show the interior elevation. So a section drawing through the building, looking at that interior wall and the new structure that's imposed on that wall. And it's a little unfortunate that the north side is the one that's the sort of the iconic view of the building where you get the full tower and it's the full height. Because that's the full height location, that's the one where we have to take the steel all the way up to grab the structure at the top of the building. So that's the north side. This is looking west towards the river. Once again, we've got new concrete at the crawl space level and at the first level. This is looking south back towards the hill with concrete at the crawl space level and then steel climbing up from there. And then this is looking east towards the rest of the brewery property. And we have quite a bit more concrete in the grain room and not as much steel. There's steel sort of coming at us in this drawing, pulling that new concrete and tying it to the new framework that's going up through the middle of the building up to the top of the tower.
Can you go back to the west one?
Yes.
So is that the one you see from the freeway? Was that the north side?
So you see the north side from the freeway. Well, yeah, so the main view was I always imagine coming down the hill from the Capitol and you're driving and then you can look off. That's the main view on the left. Yeah.
That's it there.
This is the one. This is the inside of that view. So the interior elevation is the view looking at the inside of the wall, looking north. So it's the back, this is the back side of the main view of the building. And so that's the scope that we're planning to do as part of this project. It's the scope that is in the construction permit documents that we provided to the city. There's about 400 pages of structural calculations as part of that with diagrams, and it's interesting to a structural engineer. And but it's pretty impressive the amount of it's a tall, heavy building, and the seismic forces. I think in a previous presentation we've shown the sort of the video. A lot of those forces live up high, and the top of the building really moves quite a bit in a seismic event. And the work that we saw when we did the masonry improvements was that the majority of the damage was really high, and the bottom of the building's sound, but it really when the earthquake forces are in that area, it really accelerates as it goes up, which is consistent.
Concrete on the inside would be visible from the inside, I assume.
Correct.
The steel beams crisscrossing and what have you would also be visible from the inside.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to be clear, there are steel beams that cross in front of windows as well. So you can see on this, we looked at a pattern that would minimize the amount of steel crossing in front of windows, and because of the size of the forces, the steel members just grew in size exponentially to capture those forces. And there's a certain point in we're actually doing a project in Mercer Island as well. That's a boiler building built later, it's 1928. But there's a point at which the amount of structure that you add to the building starts to overwhelm its ability to hold itself up. And so you can keep reinforcing things, but then eventually you have to go down below and reinforce more below. And so this is sort of the balance between all of those competing needs of the building, if that makes sense.
If the project started today, how long would it be to complete the project?
For the construction, it's at least 8 months of work. It might be a little bit more. We were talking about doing this project during the pandemic, and there were lots of material shortages during the pandemic. Those appear to have slowed down. The costs to build have not slowed down, but we do have access now to concrete and steel and labor forces and things like that, which we didn't have when we were first talking about working on this project 3 or 4 years ago.
David?
You see the top part of the building, and then to the left, you see the, what looks like, must be a flat roofed portion. Can you exit out of the part of the building on the right, out onto that flat roof to the left?
Meaning, like, is there a door or?
Yes.
There's no door, but the windows do provide access.
Could you turn one of those windows into a door so that you have what in effect would be an elevated viewing platform?
Yes, it's possible. The next drawings actually, I stopped before we went into the future work, but the next drawings, we included a building code review of how this building would be used potentially. And we wanted to understand sort of its capacity to house people, could it be occupied all the way up? And there's some technical aspects that we've actually spent a lot of time with your building official discussing. And we think we have a method for making a lot of this accessible. And the challenge probably with getting out onto that roof is that we would need to provide guardrails around that. So it might change the view of the building from the outside, but it seems possible.
Would you need a certificate of appropriateness for such a change?
Definitely.
Would that require historic preservation review? I would guess. so.
Definitely. Yeah. And so we're not done with historic preservation review because this is just for the seismic scope. The next step is phase 3, which is windows, doors. It's all the fun stuff, right? And copper and how do we occupy it, and where are the stairs and where are the elevators, and that's sort of the next part of this presentation. If you'd like to look at it,
Is there not a flagpole
Yeah.
at the top of the building?
the flagpole was sheared off during a storm at some point in its history.
But it could be reinstalled.
Definitely, it looks like the inside of a wooden ship, the way that they built it, and it's still there. And we, as part of the roofing and masonry project that we did, we actually put a cap over the existing structure that's there. And there's a portion of the old, I mean, it looks like a ship's mast that's sticking up out of there that's ready for another flag.
How were flags changed or raised or lowered?
There's a hatch in that roof that I was brave enough to climb up and take a peek out of and then climb back down. But the contractors were up there and tied off, and we have a temporary cover on that hatch too.
I
We
would
do,
add that,
we do have a story about that, don't we?
yes, former Commissioner Brown
Yeah, Jim
talks
Brown.
about going out there as a
And his
child
brothers, yeah,
onto the roof.
yeah, they got caught.
He was catching pigeons and he was the one chosen to go out onto the roof to capture the pigeons.
On the
And he was a
side
former
roof,
member of the Historic Commission along with many other roles in the city of Tumwater.
on the side roof, or all the way up to the top.
Up the top.
At the top,
Right at the hatch.
That's awesome.
I was,
brave and dumb, I'm not sure which.
one thing I always, and I mentioned it before, is those tile on the first floor
Yep.
walls. I hope we can preserve them or pull them off and put them on some sort of display or something.
In our current drawings, for the city, they do mention preserving those tiles, not in place, obviously, but
Yeah.
as much as can be salvaged, definitely.
Yeah.
Those will be part of the
Can you-
city's.
Can you give some dimension to the discussion of building official regarding potential?
So, yeah, so let me move forward in this presentation. And I'll tell you how far we got, because we didn't want to be presumptuous. We have not been hired to design that. But in order to do this scope, we wanted to make sure that we didn't put something in the way of future work. So we had to understand enough about how the building would be potentially used to make good decisions about how we did the seismic work inside. So, double check. Yes, so these drawings were part of the drawings that we shared with Al to discuss how the building might be used. And because the potential use is likely public access, that means assembly uses. So assembly is a occupancy category in the building code where we assume people are awake and doing things, and they're in a group. And so there are more of them. So the building code says that, there are so many square feet per person, and that's our occupant load. And so that describes to us how many stairs we have, how many exits, whether we have public facilities in the building. So we took the bare minimum of public facilities and exits. We have 2 exits from each floor. We've got public restrooms in the building, and we added an elevator to the floor plan of this building that was meant for Gravity Brewing, and we filled it up. So basically the building is full of nothing. You've got no space inside other than your ability to enter it, climb up and down, and use the bathroom. And there was very little space left over. And so we drew this drawing to illustrate that.
Yeah.
What we anticipated instead was pulling the vertical circulation out of the building. So keeping one stair in the building where we have good access up through the middle of the building, and then pulling the elevator and the second stair out of the building. So what you're looking at is north is up in this drawing. We've got the floor plan of the tower on the left with a stair in blue through the green tower, and then a stair and an elevator outside the building, probably out of a steel structure that climbs up the outside of the building. And that would be connected to the building to the east, which is that concrete building with the metal roof that's pretty cool and could potentially be a restaurant or an assembly space as well. And what this does is it opens up the brewery tower to having floor space, whether it's museum space, assembly space. It's useful again, as opposed to having just basically a building of facilities. So we kept going just far enough to sort of vet this plan in our heads. And I think the second floor is down at the bottom that shows the roofs of the concrete and steel building on the right, connection building, sort of a pavilion building that connects the two, a low building, and then the brewery tower gets to be on its own on the left with a circulation plan, and the open spaces are in green on these drawings. As you climb up through the building, and we assume that we're adding fire sprinklers, that there'll be alarms for fire, all the requirements for the current building code in this, and it'll have windows and doors and gutters and all those fun things too. So we kept going. Once again, just to look at how this might go together. So the brewery tower, if we're looking at the bottom here, the brewery tower is on the right. There would be some open building that connects the two. Maybe there's a terrace towards Capitol Lake or whatever that becomes. And then the building on the left could be restored, and the concrete building and steel, and that seems to be in pretty good shape as well. And that could be put together, and you would have the start to a place to go down at the waterfront.
Makes a pretty big Starbucks.
I think that's where we stopped.
So you didn't get, so you've mentioned a couple of theoretical uses. You mentioned a museum, assembly space. Is there not? Some section of the building is open all from the bottom, from grade up to what level? At the,
So it goes up to 4 or 5. It's actually from below grade, because that was the material elevator or the equipment that had to go up to the top. And the grain actually took its own path. Water took its own path. But yeah, so there is a spot that goes all the way up through the building to
and
4th.
how wide is that?
It's not very big, so it's not. It's big enough for the material elevator that was in there, but it's not big enough for a current elevator. Or
Specifically, how wide? What's the span? What's the width of the span?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Hmm.
Maybe
But what I'm
8
thinking
feet.
of, could you not build a climbing,
Sure,
narrow one? Do it.
you could. It's interesting to think about that vertical space, because you want to use it for something something that is, part of the building, but it's also the big opening to the north. So that's where all the main windows are, is that one column right up through the middle of the building on the north side, all the way up to the top is where all the main windows were. And it was where all the daylight, I think, and the connection to the outside was for the people who brewed beer in there too. So, and it was always open because the mechanical lift that was in there was basically just it's like a tray with
Yeah.
belts that, carried it up and down. So
Yeah.
They asked about getting out on that roof, because could you anchor a zip line?
there will be enough structure added to this building that it should support a zip line.
It'd be one way across the river.
It could become another part of the city's recreational infrastructure. Climbing wall and zip line. It'd be we could then turn the project over to the Parks and Recreation.
I want to
That's
clarify.
where the real resources are anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have any money
You need to be busier.
or staff.
To clarify, the city does not have current ownership of the white building and gray building in between.
That's correct.
We only have property strictly the tower itself. I'm making that clear. Is that correct?
Tower and 12 feet of property on
Correct.
all four sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay.
zip line could cross the river.
So, Mr. Chair, do you need a motion to approve the certificate of?
If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
I so moved.
Second,
And did you want to add something before we continue?
Please continue.
Okay,
I'm just going to wait and tell you what's going to happen next after you.
oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion to certificate of appropriateness application for phase two. Is there been moved and seconded? Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I think I'd just like to say that it's the internal structure is a very elegant plan. I just want to say thank you to Jim for coming back and for presenting to us one more time so succinctly. And that I'm looking forward to phase three, where we can really get into flagpoles and signs and the exterior lighting and
zip lines.
the zip line.
climbing walls.
Any other discussion, comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Good trip.
Yep.
Thank you. And again, I told you earlier, it's nice to have you here in person, but you always look good on Zoom as well.
I move we adjourn.
No,
Oh,
cannot accept that yet. You got a yellow flag flown on that one.
Thank you for approving the certificate of appropriateness. I wanted to just let you know what's going to happen next. We do have some estimates for the work. We'll be looking at those and discussing them with council in 2024, the beginning of the year. In spring 2024, there'll be an episode airing on abandoned places on the Discovery Channel about the Brew Tower.
Mm.
And in concert with that, we'll be reigniting our fundraising campaign now that we are fully closing out the pandemic part of this project. So that kickoff, you'll hear more about the fundraising portion and how the council decides to move forward. So they had authorized our work up into the estimate, and then they'll be looking at what the cost is and, how do we proceed after that? So more to come on the special on the Discovery Channel. We might maybe
We
have
look
a special
forward to it.
viewing. Well, maybe we can have a viewing party.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Very much. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I just would like to ask Dan about the status of the wallpaper in the brew house. Yeah, I not pressuring you. I know that it takes some time, but is it moving along?
Do you want to,
You need to go to the microphone. Sorry about that.
Yes, thanks for asking. Actually, that whole contract is up for approval by the council on Tuesday.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
So that's where we're at. Everything we had worked on has been moved right along.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
I see our next meeting date is January 18th. I wondered if we could think about extending it a little bit to make it like a retreat. A vision a little bit. We haven't done much other than the brew house project. And I would like to see us start to Imagineer a little bit and figure out what other projects we want to encourage and how to promote tourism. And we have a real treasure in our hands here, and we aren't doing much with it yet. Our heritage is special. No other community has it. And so I would like to see us work on something that's not just immediate, but looking ahead towards the future.
Good thought.
Anything else? Yes.
in regards to Councilmember Schneider's attendance, I'm not sure where we had a mix up and I haven't heard back from him. But I would request that you consider an allocation of a certain amount of funds, maybe less than or up to $1,000 from your fund. The project he's doing, we've over the last 6 months, we've done some work out at our historic cemetery on Little Rock Road. Part of that was hiring stonemasons to come out and clean the bush headstone markers. We removed a fairly large fir tree that was deemed by our arborist to be failing. That was very near the headstones and could have dropped on. So we removed that tree, and then we did some work on another tree that's adjacent to that. So we've been working at the sites. Councilmember Schneider took it upon himself to work with the tree board and some local arborists, and got a cutting from the Bush family homestead of a butternut tree from, I believe it was Ray Gleason on our tree board. It has been growing for some years, and it's 5-6 feet tall now.
Oh, good.
He would like to plant that near where we removed the fir tree, next to or somewhat adjacent to the Bush headstone, and then create a stone, kind of a stone monument, really more of a plaque that
Yeah.
talks about the importance of the Bush tree to or the butternut tree to the Bush family, and where this one came from, and that kind of thing. So he was planning to come tonight to ask if he could have some funds allocated from the Historic Commission to have that done.
The funds that he's seeking, is it coming out of 23 or 2024?
I would imagine the way Councilmember Schneider operates that, yeah, he'll have it ready to spend tomorrow. He is Johnny on the spot. So I would say,
Yeah, he called me and asked if we would bring this issue up. So I assume he was aiming for 2023. And is $1,000 enough?
I haven't seen any detail of his plan. We have some certain specs that he'll have to abide by, things, for longevity and vandalism and not being destroyed by a weed eater or a mower or things like that.
I
But
think we should wait till there's an actual proposal rather than just guessing what an appropriate sum might be.
he is going to plant the tree. So, he could come next year and say, the tree's been in the ground for a while. We'd like to do this monument, if you want to see it that way.
I would agree with David. I don't think many of us would not like having a marker, but we probably need more information at this point in time. And if we don't spend all 10,000 this year, we still got 20,000 next year. So it seems like we could delay this to another time. And
Sure.
if that's
City-
okay with the,
City budget hasn't been adopted yet, has it?
The 23-24 budget is adopted.
Oh, it has been adopted.
Yes, there's a budget amendment that will be adopted on December 5th.
He could always amend the budget then, provide his own, he could write his own ticket. Just saying.
anything else? A motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. So thank you again for coming. Have a great holiday. And do we really have a meeting coming up on the 18th of January for sure? Or do you know, Chuck? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
The four of you out there, thank you for coming,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
especially one who has a little longer drive.